I once ended up paying a quid for a giant teddy bear in a wheelchair at an auction. Howard Pugh couldn't get any bids, and he had such a sad face. The bear, that is, not Howard. So I stuck my hand up, much to the mirth of the other fellas in the crowd. Said bear was passenger in my recovery lorry for years, along with a life-size poster of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, though he did get rather oily as time ticked by. You saw some strange people and antics at these gatherings. One auction was quite exceptional, though. An old chap called Charlie, who was a fellow scrappy and also a horse breeder, used to hold a collective sale at his stud farm every May and October. He was a real character, and a generally affable sort of bloke. There was always a good turnout, and plenty of junk to inspect. I think half the people only went just to be nosy, or bid their neighbours and relatives sky high over four trailer wheels with bold tyres, or perhaps a non-running Ford Cortina. There were no facilities as such. If you needed a pee, you went behind the muck heap. If it was a sunny day, some of the farmers started to stink a bit in the heat. Mix that with cigar or pipe smoke and the greasy bacon sarnie tent, and you had quite a noxious aroma. This one Saturday at the sale was pretty sunny and warm. I had a few items entered into the auction, as had my neighbour and fellow scrappy with whom I was attending. We were having a wander round and killing time until our stuff came under the hammer. There was an old caravan towards the top of the field that was entered into the auction parked near a couple of Land Rovers. We had a look at them, and then decided to investigate the caravan's interior also. Opening the door, we found our old pal, little Billy Lane, sat in there having a sit down on a fag. He was a dead ringer for Toby Jones off the telly, and no more than 5 feet tall. We sat with him on the sofa cushions and were chatting away for a while when I spotted a woman through the caravan window in a tie-dye dress walk around between the caravan and Land Rovers. She lifted the bonnet on the one as if inspected the engine. Her dress also, then looking around, she started to urinate forcefully through her underwear. It's splashing on the floor. The other two had stopped talking and were watching too. She lowered the bonnet and, with pee still running down her legs and seemingly unfazed, wandered off. We looked at each other and Billy said, "Charlie's sale's attracting high-class punters this year, then." I bought a mid-70s Audi 80 saloon in the auction for scrap money as it was a non-runner. Well, I say it didn't run, but what I really mean is it ran fine until I quietly slipped a small, bored-up piece of tissue paper in between the king lead and the distributor cap. This sleight of hand whilst under the pretence of viewing the engine bay. With no reserve and the seller not present, the auctioneer's mate wound the battery flat in vain, trying to demonstrate it when hammer time came. Interest melted away and the car was knocked down to me. Clive the auctioneer probably suspected foul play, but really didn't give a monkey's. I would go back and collect it with the lorry later in the week. Big Pete and his mate Dave ate a lot of cornettos, Pete especially. A large man, always clad in a huge grey pullover smeared with oil and rather old from wild burns. The local garage to our yard had decided to sell a few snacks as well as the usual motoring associated fare. However, sales were never going to be fantastic, and most of the ice creams and chocolate bars were consumed by these two mechanics. One seemed to rarely enter the premises without spotting either or both clutching a cornet with hands black from oil. Things were pretty quiet when I called in one afternoon on my way to collect the Audi from Charlie's sale. Pete fancied a ride out, so rode shotgun in the cab of my old Ford Transit. Old Charlie loved a chat, especially fresh ears to bend, so knowing what was coming, I got Pete to open the gate when we arrived. Charlie was out of the cottage and in deep discussions with him before I could barely drive the truck through. I got out and said hello, then leaving Pete to walk up the field with Charlie, drove the 50 yards and started dropping the ramps ready to load. Thing was, Charlie had been having a few health issues with his gentleman area. Having already been on the receiving end of a blow-by-blow description of this, largely about various procedures which involved objects being inserted, inspected, and general probing, I made myself look incredibly busy, loading and strapping the car down. By the time I was back up in the cab, engine running, Pete was starting to look decidedly queasy. I opened the passenger door for him to get in, just catching Charlie saying, "Yeah, kid, I was pissing blood all night long after that." Pete got in and we drove back to the garage in silence. I dropped him off on the forecourt. "Bit bloody rough, that old boy's story is," was all Pete said as I nodded. "I'll fancy a cornetto then, Pete?" I asked, grinning. "Retching," he replied, "fuck that." Hello there. Thank you for watching my video. If you've enjoyed this and would like to see more, please give us a subscribe and a like. Also share, that'd be great. All the best. Take care.